Before I call the meeting to order, I would like to welcome a special group, Troop 841 here. And we're going to do something special tonight. We're going to let y'all lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance. How would you like to do that? Good? All right.
Can I have them come and stand
Yep.
here? Okay,
Yep.
so can I have you all come and stand out here and then we'll face the flag once we get ready? And kind of
Can I
stand
put you on the
around
spot?
into like
You
a
wanna start
little
it off?
half moon. There you go.
You good? You'll start it off? Okay. You're going to we're going to take the lead from you. Okay. Let's go.
I
Pledge
pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Back up there. And Mayor Cass, I'd like you to stand behind there for me.
Yep, there we go.
Sarah, will you get one with my?
Cheese. Nice.
Thank you so much.
Wait, stay. I need this for a city. I need this for the city.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
I want your
Appreciate it.
husband in it.
Thank y'all.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. He needs to get better with that.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 13th, 2023 regularly scheduled work session. Tonight, there are 3 items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card. And if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, you must fill out an affidavit that you have the authority of said organization. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Once the item is called, no other public cards will be accepted. Will the city clerk please sound agenda item A?
Thank you, Mayor. That item is the Community Development Strategic Plan Update. I'd like to invite Ms. Shuba Gangham to the podium.
Oh, there he is. Bob's going to get started first.
And our Community Director, Mr. Bob Buscemi.
Took the folder and the papers weren't in it. I'm like, wait a minute. Where'd the papers go? Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. All right. So tonight, I'm pleased to share the strategic and comprehensive plan updates for community development with you. These updates reflect our commitment to fostering sustainable growth, enhancing quality of life, and ensuring a vibrant future for the community. As outlined as a priority in the strategic plan, community development works to continue smart land planning to keep Milton unique. The goals in the strategic plan and comprehensive plan have been shaped by input from residents, leadership, and local stakeholders, ensuring that they mirror the collective vision for the community. It focuses on economic prosperity, enhanced infrastructure, enhanced quality of life, community engagement, and responsible land use. Milton is an iconic rural community with low intensity commercial nodes, and this character has been achieved by maintaining an aesthetic balance. This intentional planning has resulted in high land values. Milton is committed to its long-term comprehensive land use plan. Our dedication to smart development is evident in areas identified for specific growth and incorporating design elements that reflect our rural, peaceful nature and charm. Over the past year, we've made substantial progress in these areas. We have brought these projects before you previously for your guidance and direction. So each project we bring, check it with council. This evening, we will provide a review of the completed and ongoing projects for 2023. To accomplish these objectives, we have developed a set of strategies and are pleased to report that we remain on target to complete these goals on schedule. Shuba will provide a little more information on these specific projects in a moment. I also wanted to note that each of the projects in the strategic and comprehensive plans are tracked by community development to ensure that we are looking at the goals of each department and its impact on the overall plan as a whole. It is important to share that the projects listed have been distributed throughout the community development department to reduce the need for outside consultants, as much of these initiatives are being addressed with in-house staff. The implementation of these plans will continue to be collaborative effort with clear timelines and designated responsibilities. We remain committed to listening to feedback and guidance as we continue to move forward on these projects. And with that, I will turn it over to Shuba, who is recently promoted from senior to principal planner. So she is principal planner now, and she will shed more light on these ongoing initiatives.
Thank you, Bob. Um, So as Bob said, good evening, Mayor and Council. Today's presentation is among many other strategic plan updates that have been provided by other various city departments. My goal today is to give you an update on progress made by Community Development Department. So with that, let's get started. So as you know, strategic plan was prepared for 2021 to 2025, and it revolves around three priorities. Priority number one is to sustainability and resiliency. Priority number two, smart land planning. Priority number three, acquire, manage, and develop land and resources. While strategic plan was in works, we were also preparing the comprehensive plan 2040, and that concluded with a short-term work program. And there was a lot of overlap between these two plans and a lot of projects that came out of these two plans. So not to avoid the duplicacy of the efforts, there was a master list of projects created, and 42 out of those listed projects are led by Community Development Department. So because of this long list, project prioritization became important, and this is the process we follow. As I said, we have this master list of projects combining comprehensive plans, short-term work program, as well as strategic plans projects. Then we assessed each project based on the time sensitivity and labor intensity required, and we have grouped them into 4 quadrants. And obviously, the quadrant 1 and 2 were time sensitive, so they were prioritized for the first 2 years. For any major project, we also do step number 3, where we come in front of you and we review the goals and the scope of the project and timeline, and then we get started. So let's look into a little more detail. So as I said, priority number 2, smart land planning, involved most of our community development projects. There were 2 goals mentioned in a strategic plan. Goal number 1, under this priority, there were 2 goals. The goal number 1 is to establish Milton as a location of choice for equestrian hobbyists and preserve the farm lifestyle that contributes to the city's unique sense of character. And goal number 2 is to enhance the city's commercial nodes and character areas while maintaining the rural charm that makes Milton special. And these pictures are just some of the notable projects that directly support these 2 goals. So looking a little detail, these are our pure planning projects. Department had taken up 4 projects. 2 of them are complete, and 2 of them are wrapping up pretty fast. So our branding project will provide new material to advance cities' economic engagement as well as marketing. Our urban growth boundary project is complete, and it will refocus on growth areas of Milton, at the same time preserving the most rural most part of the Milton. Talking about growth areas, our Windward Parkway and Highway 9 strategic master plan will actually provide some strategies to reactivate our business district at Deerfield. And district at Mayfield project that we completed was more focused on the development in Crabapple district, which is also which is our downtown and business district as well. Talking about pure zoning project, Unified Development Code, known as UDC, the largest one, is wrapping up. It has completed its comprehensive review by planning commissioners. I want to thank you, all the planning commissioners, for their dedication and diligent work on reviewing this ginormous document with stuff. This flag lot width, and community unit plan, which is COP limitation. These are our text amendments to our zoning ordinance, and they're complete, and they enhance Milton's rural character. These are our department's projects that focus on economic development. We have and we continue to improve our economic development website to make it more informative. Marketing plan project is coming up very soon, and the department is continuously engaging the new prospective commercial projects in our urban growth boundary districts. And by that, I mean our Deerfield district, which is our business district, as well as Crabapple district. And economic indicators is our newest project at hand, which will actually project some of the data that will indicate the economic health of Milton. And we hope that this will be very useful to businesses as well as the community. In terms of sheer numbers, these are the 12 projects that we have completed. I don't want to read this. I just wanted to have it. Unless you want me to read this, I won't read it. And these are the 11 projects that are ongoing right now. And some of them are almost complete. For example, number 9 is a UDC. Number 9 is branding here, and the number 10 is UDC. So let me talk about the impact of all this work. So cumulatively, I think all this works, it actually directly relates to the Milton's character. We continue to strengthen Milton's unique character through land use planning and updated zoning codes. Our branding project is getting us ready for the future marketing as part of our economic resiliency. And overall, all this work we believe that it adds to the quality of life in Milton. So now let me put this into a little bit different perspective. As I said, our comprehensive plan had given us this short-term work program, and it actually, there was 5 focus areas in comp plan, which was planned synonymously while strategic plan was happening. So those 5 areas are land use, placemaking, branding, economic development, sustainability, and transportation. And there are many projects under these 5 focus areas. And as Bob said, we are not leading all those projects, but we are tracking them. And this is just a dashboard of a project management portal. And based on all the logged in progress for all the projects, as you can see here, that we have made a significant amount of progress. And if you want, I can pull up the actual portal and can show you a little more in detail. Going back to our master list of projects, these are some of the projects are on the future projects list. There are 19 of them, some more on the next page as well. And To tell you why these are remaining projects, some of the projects are really depending upon the outcome of other projects. For example, our many signage and placemaking related projects, we're waiting on the branding to finish so that we can take that material and use it for other projects. And as I mentioned before, quadrant 4 and quadrant 3 projects, which were less time sensitive. And quadrant 4, particularly the projects in quadrant 4 were, even though less time sensitive, they were labor intensive. So they were actually a little bit pushed back. While quadrant 3 projects were not as labor sensitive, labor intense, but we had to wait for them to free up some resources so that we can use them up in the upcoming years. So in summary, we, out of those 42 projects I mentioned, we have completed 29% of them, 26% of them are ongoing, and 45% of them are remaining. We have 2 more years to go until we renew both the plans, the strategic plan as well as comprehensive plan. So I feel that we are in a good shape, and I'm happy to now answer any questions if you have.
Okay, any public comment?
Not on this item, sir.
Okay, questions for Shuba?
I got a couple. Shuba, under future projects, the number one that's listed right here is to pursue the citywide Milton Development Authority. There's been a lot of discussion about that lately, both amongst the seated council members and now the council-elect. And it's been pretty loud and clear in my mind that the Development Authority seems to be something that was contemplated with probably good cause at the time when it came up during our comprehensive or our 2040 comprehensive planning about things to investigate. But at this point, I'm not aware of anybody seated or not seated yet, or incumbents that are in favor of a development authority. And as such, I would propose that, although tonight's not for voting, it is time to strike that from the project list.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The second one I would bring up is number 4 under the future projects, where it says incorporate green infrastructure policies with AG1 future development. And just something that's come to mind for me of late, where we've had, again, some community engagement, maybe for the wrong reasons, but nonetheless, it's certainly brought light to something that we should consider. And that is under AG1 use, where it's going to be declared true agricultural farming use, where we still allow the clear cutting of land from property line to property line, front to back, side to side. We should seriously consider putting in some standard buffers on that so that the property owner immediately adjacent, who would expect to have a similar AG1 buffer to what they're required to have on their land, would still be intact for the property that either has changed hands or is changing its use, where they may have enjoyed that for a long time, where if that, I think it might be actually a loophole that we just never went back and looked at it. We've experienced 2 of late that have gotten our attention. One about a year ago off of Henderson Road, and the one more recently off of Birmingham Highway. So I would just ask that you give that some serious consideration as well.
Will do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Shuba? Okay. Thanks, Shuba. Appreciate
you
it.
very
Good
much.
stuff. Okay, with that, will the city clerk please say on agenda item B?
That item, Mayor, is the discussion of the residential speed zones. Our Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
All right, good evening. This item is to discuss a possible proposed program to get your feedback on the components of it and see if it's something that you'd like us to move forward with. So what this presentation will be about is residential speed zones allow radar speed enforcement at any speed above the posted speed limit, specifically in these residential zones. And this is applicable really on streets that have speed limits of 35 miles an hour or less, and less than 35 miles an hour. So 35 is not eligible, but 30 and 25 would be. So really, this is going to be applicable in our subdivisions, neighborhoods, and possibly some of the gravel roads. This topic comes to us from the local road safety plan. We had a phase 1 measure that was to look at Milton specific speed limit zones. So I'll cover the state requirements for this sort of program, what our city requirements would be, looking to structure this as a resident-driven request, cover some engineering components of the program, examples of what this could look like in a subdivision as well as on a gravel road. And then Captain Jason Griffin will speak to the education and enforcement components of this sort of proposed program. So the State Code of Georgia provides that there's certain speed detection limitations for running radar on roadways. And there's limitations that there's certain thresholds that vehicles have to be traveling above the speed limit to enforce by radar. But it also goes on to say that this shall not apply in properly marked residential zones, which are roads with speed limits of 35 miles an hour or more are not considered residential streets, which is where we get the 30 or 25 mile an hour designated streets that could be eligible under this program. Another component of the state that would be required for this program is that any street that we'd look to do this residential zone would still need to be on our radar permit, which Georgia DOT and Department of Public Safety both approve our radar permit. So if a street that is submitted for request is not already on our list, we'd have to get that added. City requirements for this program, we look to what an example of what the city of Roswell has in their code, and it is that city council may designate eligible residential streets within the city as designated residential zones as defined in that state code. So another component that we would need to decide upon is how those eligible streets are considered, whether it's a list in the ordinance, if it's done by resolution, or how that list is maintained and approved. We'd need a policy for how we would operate this program, and then the police department, Captain Griffin will speak a little more to how it could play into their enforcement strategy. Did say we're looking at setting this up as a resident-driven request. And the way we're structuring this is similar to the traffic calming, where we do request that the applicant for a street or subdivision have the authority to act on behalf of that group. And we'd be looking at those stakeholders as anyone who would travel in the zone to access their property. To further support that it's resident driven as well as supported by the community, we'd look for a petition of the study area to vote in favor of having their streets in a residential zone. With engineering look at the eligible streets, again, the first criteria is the posted speed limit 25 or 30 miles an hour? Is it on the radar permit? And the radar permit does require a minimum length of a roadway of a quarter mile. So the street would need to be at least a quarter mile long. And then if it's not on the list, it must be approved to be added. Another component will be looking at volumes and classification. So we want to make sure there's a minimum amount of volume on the roadway to be worthwhile of the administrative costs that it would take to enforce speed limits along some of these roadways. And we'd look at the functional classification just to make sure it was a local classified street with the design speed of 25 or 30. For the process, what we're looking at is, first of all, the applicant would come to the city to request the zone. Public Works would review the eligibility criteria. Then we'd be looking for the petition at that point. Once we know that it's supported, then we would go through the effort of having it added to the radar permit list of roads. And once that's approved, it could be added to the city code or done by resolution to kind of maintain that list of what those eligible roads are. And then we'd mark the residential zone for to close out the pre-enforcement process. So here's an example of a subdivision. This one Crabapple North recently submitted for traffic calming in their neighborhood. So we actually have Freemanwood Lane that is on our radar permit. It is 0.4 miles long and the speed limit's 25. These are some counts we did a couple years ago on kind of a midpoint near the rear of the neighborhood, looking at how many cars a day. That's what the ADT stands for, is average daily traffic. So in each direction, it's a little over 100 cars. And then what the 85th percentile speed is, and that's where 15% of the cars are going higher than that speed. So just an example of what speed data looks like on a roadway, as well as showing that it is in the radar permit and could possibly be an eligible street. Okay, get some water. Okay, for a gravel road example, we looked at Wood Road. And Wood Road's got a few complexities with it. It is in the radar permit. It's 1.42 miles long, and the speed in the radar permit is 25. The radar permit, there would never be a speed in the radar permit that's less than 25. But as part of the trail plan and kind of a pilot study several years ago, we posted the road at 15 miles an hour to support all the mixed uses that exist on that roadway. So currently it has, it's not radar enforceable at the 15 miles an hour. So if an option for this road could be to look at the residential speed zone if it's supported by the residents along that roadway. But the requirement of that would be to post it at 25, which matches the radar permit. But then that would allow it to be radar enforced as a residential zone at any speed above 25. And the map or the graphic on the rear of this slide just shows some data we've been looking at as far as the volumes of what those other users are on the roadway. So the bottom line is the number of vehicles, and these are, the data points are daily. So it's typically just over 200 cars a day on around the Wood Road, Phillips Circle area. The blue line represents a count station we have out that collects anything that breaks the light beam across the roadway. So it could be a walker, it could be a walker with a dog, it could be a horse, a bike, just anything that passes that beam, but it also includes all the vehicles. So really the difference in those two lines are what the volume of other users are. And that's just to show, again, that's something that'll have to be considered as we look at particular situations, but some of those other users could play into determining if the residents wanted to move forward with a residential zone or continue to keep it posted at the 15. Now I'll let Captain Griffin come and talk about how education and enforcement could work under this program.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Anytime we roll out a new traffic pattern, device, signal, we team up with Public Works and do a social media campaign just to make the citizens aware. We would do the same thing here. Just like every other instance, we would have a 30-day warning period. Once everything is instituted and it goes live, it's basically when our officers would go out. They would make traffic stops if need be, but they would educate, give a warning, and just further educate the citizens of the new rule or the new zone. After that 30-day period, violators would be subject to receive a state citation. And of course, this aligns with our department's overall three-pronged approach to all traffic issues, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. So.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Not on this item, sir.
Okay, questions for Sarah?
Just one question. So it sounds like in order to have this apply, the neighborhood would have to actually come forward and they'd have to meet 67%. So it'd be just like a traffic calming application, but to say we now want to have the speed limit enforced with radar within our subdivision. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And And is it pretty quickly, if, let's say if someone did come and do that, how quickly before we add it to our radar permit? Is that a laborious process or can that happen pretty quickly?
We're just going through a new system of making updates to the radar permit. So the 3 roads that we're in the process of getting lowered are going through this new digital process. We hope it's going to streamline things to move a little quicker. But right now it does take several months to get DOT to review it. So it would have to still go through that process.
Councilmember Moore, then Jacobus.
Sarah, just on the 67% issue, personally having dealt with that in the last year and a half or so, can you take a hard look at that language, please, and ensure that it reads the way we intended? That it's 60%. I think there was some debate at one point about whether it was 67% of those who were immediately affected versus 67% of the neighborhood. I want to make sure that we don't have room for manipulation of that number.
We would do the posting at the very front of the neighborhood where the speed limit sign is. So in almost any case, it would be the entire neighborhood unless someone's driveway fronted on a, say, a main road instead of within the subdivision.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Jacobus.
The 67%, was that something that was decided upon years ago or?
Right, that was the standard when we redid traffic calming back in 2010, I believe. We looked at a lot of neighboring jurisdictions, and that was a similar metric that was used for indicating support of a traffic calming type measure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that actually, that was kind of a holdover when we actually set up the ordinances initially, because Fulton County always had 67%, so you'd have a super majority, so you make sure that your neighborhood actually was behind whatever it is you're trying to do.
Steve.
So one of the, and I just want to make sure that the council is clear on the intent of this program. This actually came out of some of the concerns that we were hearing on Wood Road, which I assume is why Sarah used that as the example. What this does is it eliminates that 10-mile-an-hour buffer. So what this would allow is for our police officers to be able to cite people for going less than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So it's an enforcement tool, but it does eliminate that 10-mile-an-hour gap, which I think that a lot of our residents have felt. If this is something that the council is interested in, we can start working up the language, ensuring that we're capturing all of the concerns in here, and then present something back to you for your consideration.
Council have any feedback other than sounds good?
Yeah, it ultimately ends up being a neighborhood decision if they want to agree to that 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. And I think it affords them the authority that they're looking for. It's a great idea.
I think it makes sense because if they decide, like Paul said, if they decide to do it, 10 miles per hour over in a 25 mile per hour speed area is a dangerous thing for neighborhoods and for kids playing. So if the neighborhood says they want to do it, I think, and again, you had talked about giving a grace period, so education within the neighborhood when they come forward.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Everybody else, good?
So,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, will the city clerk please stay on agenda item C?
item C, Mayor, is discussion of short-term concepts for green space bond properties. Miss Emily Groth.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council.
Emily, one second, I'm gonna turn it over to Councilmember
Yeah,
Kirkland.
I'm going to be here for the first part, but because my property adjoins Cooper Sandy, I'm going to be over there. But then I can't leave because we have an executive session.
Sorry.
Okay. So anyway, please, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Tonight, we'll be discussing some short-term considerations for green space properties as it relates to the green print, a planning effort with assistance from Parks and Recreation and Communications. This is a continued conversation from the green print update presented to council in October. Tonight, we'll quickly review the current status of these properties and then dive into the needs of the closed properties. These needs include potential access, infrastructure improvements for safety, and ongoing maintenance and operations. We'll include some estimated cost considerations for these initial and bare minimum needs. And lastly, we'll look at next steps related to the prioritization of these needs and the continuation of the green print. We've seen this status update before as we've discussed these properties. 3 properties are open or partially open, and 3 remain closed. Tonight, our focus is on the condition and needs of the closed properties. We'll first start with Hamby Road. We've got some footage to show you tonight, one of many. This is the Hamby Road green space. It's
Get a gold star for the video.
Wow.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
This is the 5-acre tract?
This is 28
25,
acres.
that's right.
28
Yeah.
acres, yep,
Yeah.
right along Hamby Road.
Yeah, I was getting confused with the other. Thank you.
You can see it's pretty dense throughout the majority of the property. And then we'll look at the survey a little bit later, but the survey calls out some floodplain area, and that's what you see here. And just for context, this is the manor across the street. Yes, yep, sorry. So for each of these properties, we'll look at the survey received at the time of acquisition and call out any existing features or infrastructure. So we'll look at the Hamby Road survey. The property is highlighted in green. The existing fencing that's what's called out on the survey is highlighted in orange. And creeks and streams are called out in blue. So we've got some fencing that was called out here, all along the front edge of Hamby Road, and some fencing in the middle of the property that we'd need to verify the condition of. We also have a small Chicken Creek tributary that flows throughout the southern half of the property. There are 2 access gates, one up closer to the entrance of the manor near a power line, and then one across from the manor maintenance golf cart shed. This gate is where we'd propose parking. It would follow a short overgrown road, overgrown trail that would access this existing bridge that we'll see in a second. And we have another short video to show you that kind of pieces things together. So this is that second gate on the right. This is where we'd propose parking that will get you down to this existing bridge. It's just an overgrown old road, overgrown old trail. Doesn't go too much deeper past this bridge.
Bridge looks in good shape.
Yeah, it does.
Right here is that gate on the other side. Comes right down here.
Sorry, can you speak up?
Yep, right here is this gate on the other side, the gate that we were looking at. And then it just comes down right through here. Now we're looking internal to the property, essentially going back up towards the Hopewell-Hamby roundabout. Hopewell Road is parallel on our right. So considering the current conditions that we reviewed, we made a needs assessment table that we'll see for each property. This table covers the bare minimum improvements for potential public access. For each item, we've identified existing conditions, any immediate needs, estimated timeline, and estimated cost. So there's no existing parking right now. What we went over, we'd consider a small 10-space lot off of Hamby Road. The existing structure mainly is that bridge that we saw. We would want to ensure the structural integrity of that bridge before we send potentially people or vehicles or maintenance vehicles over that. We know from the survey and general existing conditions, there is some fencing, but we would want to highlight that southern leg of the fencing, especially if that's where we're considering access. And trails, there is that old road that we saw in the video to the bridge, a little bit past it. In tandem with what's come out of the green print planning, we've proposed a small quarter loop trail. So this needs assessment initially for bare minimum needs totals $50,000 with a 20% unknown contingency. So that'd be $60,000 initially for these short-term basic needs. This doesn't include any ongoing maintenance or any additional public uses or amenities.
And really quick, I'm going to call public comment after each property. Is everybody okay with that? Just, yeah.
Discuss it.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay.
Okay. Are you done
Yes,
with this
this
one?
is a good stopping point.
Okay. Do we need public comment on this property? Anyone turn in a public comment card?
Well, it doesn't stipulate
know.
this specific
We're
property.
gonna probably have to we're gonna have to wing it on that one. So if we just call the first name, let's see if it's for this one.
Sure. Mr. Michael McElroy?
Okay. Yeah, we kind of just go whoever turned in your comment card first is the first speaker. So yeah.
Mayor.
You'll just state your yep. 2 minutes per person, 10 minutes total. State your name and address for the record.
Sure.
Thanks.
So I'm Michael McElroy. I live at 3270 Chenery Drive. I saw a property map. I'm one of the homes that borders this particular property. I have lived in that home for 5 years since we built it, along with all of the folks behind me. In general, I know I only have 2 minutes. I'm coming here from a ecology and conservation perspective. I moved to Georgia 8 years ago. And prior to that, I worked at the largest environmental systems research company in the country. Did about 15 years of research in conservation and other similar areas. Also have a PhD where I do research and teaching in those areas as well. When I look at this property, I see a ecosystem full of animals that are thriving. And when I think about the benefit or value proposition of a quarter-mile loop versus leaving 28 acres of pristine, very nice topology, great opportunity for animals to stay out of wind, to stay out of cold. When I think about the displacement of those animals, when we would propose to take half of that land and use it for walking trails and things of this sort, the displacement of those animals are going to go onto public roads, likely cause more accidents, put our children in more risk. And I feel that in Milton, and one of the reasons we moved here was there was a focus on ensuring that those properties that are a sanctuary and are a habitat for animals will be preserved. And I could see the benefit, right? I understood the initiative behind the purchase of all of these parcels of land. I see that there needs to be some development on them to make that justified for the city. At the same time, I would ask you all to strongly consider in this case that the ecology that's happening there is far more beneficial to Milton and its environment than a quarter of a mile walking trail would provide to the community. As a last point, I would say even the
Time has
location-
expired, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Kurt Wangenheim? I invite you to the podium.
Good evening, all. Kurt Wangenheim, 3240 Chenery Drive. I also back up to the proposed park area. A couple things. We actually have walked this property hundreds of times. It's my backyard, basically. I don't think the assessment actually reflects what actually goes on back there. There is more than Chicken Creek out there. There are several natural streams and creeks that run all through that area. The wildlife is abundant, as Mr. McElroy also said. The access road that you're talking about on the gate in the parking area, 20 feet off of it goes down a steep incline. So there's going to be grading that has to be done in order to allow parking to be done out there. It's not suitable for 10 cars. There's trees, big trees in that area for parking that would have to come down. I don't think that's been assessed. The road and the bridge that are out there, they end at that bridge, slightly past that. So there's going to have to be construction of trails going through there, bridges over these creeks. I walked it yesterday when we found out about this meeting was happening. So we apologize for being a little bit disoriented, but we just found out about this less than 24 hours ago. There are going to have to be construction. It's not a $4,000 trail unless we're talking about just going out there with a brush hog once a year and brushing it down. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of infrastructure that has to go in there. It also brings up the fact that what do we do about the safety of our property now it's going to back up to this open area where people are going to have free reign? If it's only a 25 or 0.25 mile loop going around this thing, what are we doing for if people aren't using it? Then kids are going to find out about it. And then that leads to trouble. I know if I was a teen and I had a place that people weren't going, hey, that'd be Party City for me. On the map that we also received, there's an amenities building proposed. We have no idea what that means. What is this amenities? Is this a building? Is this lights? Is this bathrooms? Are we putting in grills? Are we putting in things that can create fires in a natural forest environment? I think there's many questions that we have that were never even mentioned, and now it's up for public hearing. It's a little disingenuous for you guys to do that to us. It's our neighborhood. It is the lifeblood of what goes on back there with the community for the animals and for us, and it presents a safety buffer from us. And I don't think it's fair to just do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Will you please call the next speaker?
Mayor, the next one I will call is Betsy Jacks, and I'm going to read her statement. She is in opposition. We are opposed to walking trails or any development. There is too much nature and wildlife that will be disturbed: deer, bobcats, fox, couple of numerous birds. And the final is from Tressa Mild, in opposition as well. I oppose to walking trails and Hamby Road green space that would disturb natural terrain, streams, and the abundant wildlife in that area: deer, fox, owls, bobcats. Proposed trail is too close in proximity to property lines for Tanglewood Preserve, creates concern with people trespassing and liability for homeowners with the natural landscape, hills, fallen trees, ditches. And that concludes.
All right, thank you so much. I will open it for questions for staff. I mean, I will just go ahead and tell everyone here, this is like the first step of many steps in this entire process. And I want everyone to know in this room that no matter what council's decision is moving forward, you will be engaged and you will be communicated during the entire time. So I want you to know that, because I know council, we worked through the Milton Country Club opening, which was a very long process, and we worked with residents along the way, and that took a long time. And this is just the beginning of a very long step. So with that, I will turn it over to any council questions for staff. Councilman Jacobus?
Yeah, I have a couple things. My request here was that we get it open as soon as possible, but we limit the amount of construction that we do. So, from my perspective, I would not want any trails done. My thought was that we find the best place possible for cars to park, because people can't park on the side of the street. Everybody in the city owns this land, so they're welcome to visit it. But my understanding was we were going to keep these as natural as possible. So there weren't going to be buildings. We weren't going to go in and do trails. We were going to put a place where people could come and park, because they can't park on the street. But that was it. And if the spot you pick does have a deep incline, let's take a look at the other side and see if there is a spot where the least amount of construction and disturbance goes on. The idea was to open it up and let people go into this beautiful spot and walk.
Yeah, to be minimally invasive
Yeah.
was what historically we've talked about with any of these properties. Not forbid visitation, but to be I can't say it again. Yeah, you got the point.
Yeah, and, Emily, can you tell what type of parking are you proposing? Is this going to be just like gravel like we did out at Lakapani? What type of
I'll let the expert weigh in here.
pardon?
I'll let the expert weigh in.
So for this particular one, while we heard feedback that the residents wanted parking more hidden from the roadway, we felt like for Hamby, the access would be more of like a kind of a semicircle drive. So it'd have two drive aprons on Hamby so within the right of way, it would be a concrete apron that you could pull off the road. And then it would just be a gravel kind of semicircle wide enough so that someone could park as well as someone could drive by. It's not going to be a a large two-way driveway, but that was what we'd envisioned for Hamby, was just gravel drive. It will have to be paved or concrete where it ties into Hamby Road. And maybe less than 10 spaces, but pretty much it'll kind of just follow the semicircle. So not too far beyond the right of way, actually. That's what we were looking at.
Okay, and then we had expressed concern I guess it was maybe 2 meetings ago, when we saw the amenities in the bathrooms. Those were things that we were saying, that would be destroying green space that we actually dedicated and bought it for that reason, to leave it undisturbed. I understand doing the parking because you need to have a safe place, but I guess my view, and I don't know where the rest of the council is coming from, but to do amenities and bathrooms and put in a septic field for a bathroom, I don't think that's what we want for our green spaces.
I don't think is that what you're proposing?
So for Hamby, and Emily can speak to this, we had just a point shown of some amenity feature, whether it's a picnic table, it could be a bench, it could be a shade structure, it could be just an informational board that talks about what wildlife live in the floodplain. It varies, but we just thought like somewhere on the property we could have some sort of amenity along with the.
Maybe that's where we need to
Clarify, no bathroom, yeah.
Define what that is, because amenity sounds like you're going to put a building out there or do something elaborate. A basic sign, that's a little bit different. I wouldn't look at that as an amenity. I would not classify that as an amenity.
Yeah, this is all great feedback. I think the intention with that was not to bring the hammer down on exactly what's going to go where, just to continue to gather public feedback on if an amenity is a good spot here, what would you like to see, if anything?
I think, go ahead, sorry.
I think we need to be careful about when we mentioned that we wouldn't want to see the parking from the road. I think it depends on the park and what land is available. If it's easier and causes less disturbance to have the parking near the road, then I'm okay with that. I don't know about others.
Agreed.
Yep.
But if putting it in a little bit and hiding it doesn't disturb as much and it works fine, that's fine. But if just putting it off and plopping down 10 spots is easy and much more doable, I'm okay if you see those cars there, personally.
Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, I think to build on what Councilmember Jacobus was saying, parking is going to be on a one-off basis. Something as significant as that. We've all talked about the desire to make sure that they're not seen if that's the case. But a property like this one, where it's not as significant size as some of the others that we own, I think we are going to have to take a careful look at that. I think this one too, well, let me say it differently. We've been loud and clear about very little infrastructure, meaning no restrooms, just get away from that kind of stuff. I think that probably even gets away from things like shade structures, et cetera. I certainly can appreciate there are ample opportunities to engage things like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts for projects to do identifying of wildlife or some of those kinds of things. What a wonderful way to engage the community without necessarily engaging on something really significant from the city.
Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, and I think there are some places where when we talk about picnic tables or places like that, if you look at, we got Birmingham Park listed on this, which that was a park. We've left it as passive, but that may be more suitable for something like that, where we have open area if you want to put a bench or something like that. But I think the green space, the more, my view anyway, when we went forward, this was to preserve as much as we could so that when you're driving along, you don't see, this was to protect from subdivisions. That's the other thing. This property could have been slated for a subdivision, and we tried to protect it by actually purchasing it, and then keep some of the green space along the way. I'd say just, again, what Councilman Moore said, less is more. I mean, let's make it less is more. Let's make it minimal, especially on these properties. Let's just try to see what we can do to just open it. That's, I think, what the majority of council said the one night that we had the last presentation. That's what we're interested in.
Something to consider for a green space like this, where we historically have talked about horse trails and hiking trails, and we've been using the word trail. A park like this one, I think footpath is probably the more appropriate. If we're going to have any kind of use in it, let it be just a footpath. So that the natural use from whatever number of people are in there is what creates that usability. Nothing groomed, no significant maintenance, just footpath.
Steve, before.
I just want to make sure we're clear going forward. Can you bring the budget back up?
And
I want to see what specifically the council wishes for us to do,
And I would also want to
what
make
that
sure,
timeline and cost could be.
but I want to be very careful because, anytime we opened up properties in the past, we had multiple meetings with the community. And I want to make sure, we give direction, but also we make sure we communicate it with all the residents that are going to be affected, that they are at least communicated along every step of the way. Because I want to make sure we're not missing something here, and it's important to do that.
Can I add a caveat to that, though?
Yeah, sure.
As long as that, and we absolutely want to engage the community, as long as it doesn't protract our ability to get it to the point of usability. Some level of usability should be ASAP. And then additional levels of engagement, because there's going to be some other more significant amenity that may concern some citizens besides just getting it open. I'm in favor of absolutely engaging as long as we don't delay opening.
Okay. All right, Emily, you want to answer Steve's question there, I guess, on the costs and timeline?
Yes, it was if we're just some more direction on immediately what to do based on this chart.
So the access and parking, 4 months and $40,000, it sounds like that's something like the council wants us to do now, not this is something we should be planning on.
I just want to make sure that, like Councilmember Jacobus said, we just put it at the right spot. So, y'all go out there. If y'all believe that's the right spot, then that's where it can go. But if you think it can go somewhere else, then it can go somewhere else. So, I mean, are y'all on the same page?
Are we signing off on this?
Yeah, I want to.
Sounds like we've
I
got
want to be
more
very careful
meetings to go
because I don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction in one meeting and we're saying, oh, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, if this is where y'all believe this is the best spot to put the parking, then that's great. But I want to make sure this is communicated effectively to the entire community before we just start.
Well, we heard an important assessment brought to us by one of the members of the community
Correct.
this evening. So we clearly can't go forward until we take a hard look at that. But I think once you've done that.
I mean, personally, I think the structured dollars and the trail dollars can come out of this, and parking may even be able to be reduced if that parking was considered pulling in, and that's not the best way. If to get a number of spots, it takes 40 grand, I think that's fine to start with. I think what we're saying to you is, let's put it where it works best.
Correct.
You're the experts, so we'll let you go look at it and say, when we look at it, the least expensive way and the least obtrusive way to do it is this.
Mhm.
And we trust your judgment on that. At least I do.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Appreciate it. That's good guidance. We're going to be bringing back before you with the contract, with the next steps of where we would recommend the parking, what it's going to cost, and that's about all the improvements we're looking over on Hamby. The only thing I'm going to recommend is that we do, in fact, check out the structural integrity of that bridge because people will be on it.
Right.
But beyond that, Sarah, Emily, I mean, does that work?
Sure, yes, and we can come back with some more. These were very high-level estimates, so actually, once we lay something out and put together a cost for it, we just need to know if we want to continue the due diligence on at least some components of this while we still work on the green print, which is the bigger, further planning of the green spaces.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think the parking necessarily is going to really impact the overall green print. I think we're okay with moving forward with that. Unless I'm missing something.
We were trying to honor the original thought of hiding the parking. Perhaps if that is not as much of an issue, maybe there is a better spot. But Sarah's an engineer. I'm sure we're going to find the right spot.
Yep.
And it would great if we can get the residents that about this all their contact information, so they're just aware of every step in the process, so they don't miss a meeting or anything. That'd be great. Okay, is council okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, we'll go on to Cooper Sandy.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna be next door.
Okay.
This'll One more.
Yeah, I think there's one more.
Three.
Yeah, there's one more.
No, there's, yeah. there's three.
All right, so this is the Cooper Sandy green space. It's about 100 acres
What
with
a
this
beautiful piece of property.
5-acre lake, about 5-acre lake here called Eads Lake. It begins at the intersection of Bethany and Providence and follows along both of those roads. Over the trees here, you're looking now back onto Bethany, towards the direction of Bethany Road. So again, we'll review the Cooper Sandy survey. It's a little bit of an older survey. It does not call out the Cooper Sandy Creek. That's what this blue line stream here is. And then you've got Eads Lake here. There are 3 access gates on the property, 2 on Bethany, and 1 over here on Providence Road. The only fencing that was called out in the survey is this southernmost border. And it's about 100 acres.
Excuse me, there's 2 gates on Providence, correct?
There's 2 gates on Bethany and 1 on Providence. Right here, right before the bridge on Bethany Road. Right down here along the property line straightaway. And then right here along Providence. This is the gate on Providence Road. And this is the southernmost gate on Bethany, this one down here. You can see there is some elevation change within the property. We have some additional photos here. This is the lake that you saw with some native plantings. And this is Bethany Road, kind of with your back towards the Providence-Bethany intersection, above the Cooper Sandy Creek, kind of this section.
Are we pushing?
We have some additional trail videos here. This one is relatively similar to the Lackey Road green space, Lakapani Preserve. Just a short video of some old growth trees and relatively cleared trails, though some overgrown. The trail prioritization plan did identify some existing trails and proposed parking. This aided our needs assessment table for this property, and we've called back to these planning elements during the green print. It calls for the clearing of these old logging roads and a southern parking area. So again, this table covers the bare minimum improvements for potential public access. There's no parking currently. This one, we would propose a little bit of a bigger parking lot, gravel lot, with the long drive aisle, so it would be a little bit more hidden deeper into the property. Some structures, there's some old demoed building material throughout the property. There's silt fence along one side of the lake, and there's a historic truck that you can see off of Providence Road. So for those structures, we'd consider debris and silt fence removal and consider any preservation of that truck. The fencing, as we saw in the survey, is just that southernmost property line, so we would need to consider what that might look like. And then the trails were identified in the trail plan, proposing 1.2 miles of trail. And I'll stop here for questions, and we'll move into Webb Road.
Can we have public comment real quick? Are we
Yeah.
good? Do we have public comment?
I do. I'd
Okay.
like to invite Morgan Van Gelder to the podium.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Morgan Van Gelder. I live at 13550 Providence Road, and I am the sole home that overlooks the lake there. I would just like to make sure that it's made known. I have 3 little girls. We live right there on that property, and I feel a tremendous responsibility and a weight to observing that property, to making sure that it would stay safe for my family. And then also, there have already been children, I'm going to say adolescents, who like to find their way back there. It is incredibly difficult to see other than from my house. And so there have been, thankfully, most of them are really good, well-behaved kids to this point. But when there's a property like that that's very difficult to see, there's going to be, as we've discussed already, opportunities for nefarious activities. So I would just like to make sure that there's some kind of plan in place to make sure that it is well monitored back there. Otherwise, that solely falls on my family when we see activity back there that's going awry. I would also like to say that I would just love the opportunity, in addition to a parking lot off of Bethany Road, that there actually be some trails. I hear you guys saying that you want to just open it up and open it up as quickly as possible. I'm not sure what the rush is, but I do believe that if we want to preserve conservation and we want to preserve the nature there and the wildlife, that some trails are going to be necessary, because I do believe that if people just start mucking their way through wherever they want, there's the opportunity that the habitats of there's so many deer back there, we have so many birds, we have so much stuff going on back there, and also the lake itself, that without some kind of natural trails, and they don't need to be hideous or paved or anything like that, I would actually prefer that they stay rural looking, but without some kind of formalized trail system, I believe that will ruin our infrastructure back there. So those are my 2 comments.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Not for this property.
Okay, Councilman Jacobus?
How much of the upper corner of Cooper Sandy are we taking with the roundabout?
So we have the roundabout that is shifted towards the city property for the actual roundabout, but then we also have a feature that's going to help with the water flow from the roundabout. That's going to be like a landscaped. It's not a traditional detention pond. It's more like a water quality settling, slowly dispersing water type of feature. So between that and the roadway, it might be about half an acre. I know we have that appraisal done for the impact of the roundabout, but so we have the roundabout at the corner, and then just along the Bethany frontage of the city parcel is where that water quality feature will be located.
Okay. Part of my reason for asking that question is I wonder whether accessing this area is best done where these gates are, or whether there's other areas that might be better as far as the level of the land, how many trees are there. Are we just going to these 3 access points because they already exist without taking a look at the entire perimeter to say, well, it'd be easier to just create a new access point. We destroy less trees, the ground's leveler, et cetera, et cetera.
I think originally the intent was to focus our efforts on infrastructure that was already existing, because they do have, like Hamby and Cooper Sandy do have those old roads that you can kind of see. But we can consider that approach as well.
Councilman Moore?
Yeah, this is more of a housekeeping thing. I think when Carter was here, he brought this up too. There's a subdivision called Cooper Sandy, but the creek itself has traditionally been known as Copper Sandy Creek. I don't want us, if that's truly what the creek is called, is Copper Sandy, I don't want us to rename, come up with our own name just because we've been saying Cooper Sandy. So I would just ask if staff could take a look at it, because when I do a search, I come up with Copper Sandy Creek starting back a ways, and then it goes onto this property. But I just ask you to please take a look at that. Let's not rename something if in fact the proper name is Copper Sandy.
Absolutely.
Any other council feedback?
I would just add my sort of mantra to this is least infrastructure investment as possible, minimal invasion, hide the parking if we can, find a way to get the trails open with minimal investment.
You know, it may be beneficial to put in the parking and use the park for a year before we start building any trail, to see what's really needed and what would work best. I hate to see us go and start putting trails in before people have ever even had a chance to visit it at all. It may make more sense to just do one section, do one thing at a time, get the parking, see what it's like, and see whether there's some natural areas that would make sense, maybe different than what was originally outlined here. And maybe a lot less work needs to be done.
Jan, I think this one has a couple of older logging trails that already exist, so obviously you want to capitalize on that without creating anything new if we don't have to.
Right.
If that's sufficient to create some usability, then you stop right there, like you suggest, for now, until we see what how much use it's getting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councilman Morgan.
And when we opened up Lakapani, we didn't do any new trails, did we? We did the parking, and essentially then the existing trails is what people can hike. Is that correct?
Correct. We cleaned up the existing trails. This Cooper Sandy is very similar to Lackey.
You cleaned it up so it actually was walkable, but we weren't cutting down a bunch of trees and clearing new paths. It was basically just what was naturally there. We made it a little bit easier for people to actually walk on it.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think this is a much different piece of property than the Hamby or the Webb. Each property is definitely unique, and this is a great property. So, yeah. I think with that, I guess, just make sure those residents are just notified on what's going on. I know there's that couple residents in the middle, I think, that it kind of surrounds. So make sure they all know what's going on. That's all. Okay, with that, we'll go on to the next property. Oh, yeah. No, she probably doesn't. She must be like,
I'll take her up.
hey, we're done.
It's on the phone.
All right. Proceed.
Okay. All right, we've got the Webb Road green space here. It's very small, about 4.8 acres between Highway 9 and Cogburn Road. For context, this facility up here in the corner is Vitality Senior Living. What's all this greenery right here?
Looks like a great spot for a future parking lot. Kidding. I'm kidding.
This property is completely different than the other.
It sure is.
And
It's
it could be used in a different manner.
You look at that and you wonder, should we even consider ever putting a parking lot there? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. You take up half the property.
It's more like a pedestrian
Mhm.
Yeah.
location. I agree with you.
On this one, I think we just leave it as is. I mean, I personally, maybe some trails down the line, but I would not go in there with a parking lot, personally.
I think, they've got is there a little substation or there's a
Yes.
electrical thing? I don't know if there's a natural trail off from that. We'd also talked about connecting, I think it's called, it's not HOA, but POA.
The Windward Preserve?
Yes, to see whether or not that makes any sense or if there can be connectivity there. Because that, I think, winds around almost over to Cogburn Road. Although we don't own it, that was one of the things I know a long time ago when we were considering this. We said, maybe we can partner with them to see if there's a way. But I like the idea of keeping it more pedestrian because you'd have to take out a bunch of trees if you were to put any parking in there.
We've got some photos here. This is the stream that follows the majority of the property. And this is the angle leaving the Vitality Senior Living parking lot. This is kind of the corner of the property. So this is the survey. Again, the property is in green, and we have that flowing creek, mostly that borders the entire property right here. And then it divides our two tracks and flows underneath Webb Road. This is our next door neighbor, this Fulton County utility pad. It is the only fencing. It's not our property, but it was important to note that fenced off utility lot does exist right here.
The area in between our two tracks, is that the homeowners association own that? Who owns that and what is it?
That is the
Yeah.
buffer for the creek, for the stream.
For the neighborhood there, the community?
I believe it's just the state stream buffer.
But who, it looks like
Owns
they
it.
still own that, the Windward HOA.
Who owns
homeowners.
the land in between?
When we're
Oh,
village
okay.
owners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
does?
It's that village association.
Is there any, there may be an opportunity to do something with that HOA in that area, if it's already been cut or if it's cleared as a catch or something. I mean, it may be a way to combine the two areas, working with them. I don't know, but.
Emily, you had that discussion with them, didn't you?
Yes, at the
Oh, okay.
second Green Print meeting, 2 members of the HOA came out just to conceptually talk about something like that.
What do they have to say? Anything?
I think we'll probably talk about that later. I mean, I don't know if we want.
Okay.
I mean, they expressed some interest
Correct.
in cooperating with us and seeing what we can do together.
Right.
Emily, are there any existing trails at all on that parcel?
I had always thought, though, I asked them and got an update. They said, if any, then they'd be pretty small, overgrown, or rudimentary. So I've kind of heard both. So this property has minimal needs. We're not proposing parking, but wouldn't use nearby parking. There are no known structures, and the stream that follows the majority of the property could be considered some type of property boundary. There are no trails. We would consider a quarter-mile loop trail for some utilization. And I'll stop here for any web questions on Web Road.
Any public comment?
Not on this property,
Okay.
sir.
Questions for Miss Emily? I'll tell you, I appreciate y'all putting this together in short order. I know that was.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I will
I do
adjourn
have
in.
a couple more slides.
Oh, sorry. Me.
Way
Sorry.
to go there,
Sorry.
Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor.
My bad. Sorry.
No worries. Just some other costs and future decisions to keep in mind. Property boundaries, fencing, trail surface material have also been considered in other plans, like the Milton City Park and Preserve Master Plan, pulled from what you see here. And these properties, if open, would require ongoing operational needs like land management, mowing, trail maintenance, and some public safety improvements. Another important factor are the incidental costs, things like tree removal for parking and erosion concerns related to social trails or desire paths, off-trail walking, kind of like what you see here. These other images show examples of some mitigation efforts related to untethered public access. The signs highlight the importance of staying on designated trails and within the property boundary. We are also a Leave No Trace community partner in which we can leverage this to educate both the visitors and further protect the environment. So our next steps are listed here. We'll begin work on any feedback related to these short-term considerations, like moving forward with these initial projects, either prioritized individually or as a group of 3, and continuing a phased approach through the green print. At the same time, if council desires, we can work with environmental organizations to help with our needs and further protections. We posed this option at the October meeting, and it could also relate to the recent conversation regarding conservation easements. Additionally, we'll engage the adjacent property owners again and provide updates. We intend to release an updated community survey with more tailored questions. We intend to have a green print meeting number 3 and come back to council with draft recommendations.
Can I make one? I'm sorry, you go.
No, you go
No,
ahead.
you, please.
I have a couple things. one of the things that always concerns me when we do community surveys is we open it up and we get all these wonderful ideas, and people always send back all these great things they'd like to see us do because we don't tie what it costs to doing that. So if you're going to do a survey and say, would you like trails? I think you need to put in there, for every foot of trail, it cost us $100,000 or whatever it may be, so that when they're making this, they see the impact on their tax. So I think that's very important. The other thing that concerns me, and it was brought up earlier tonight, when we put parking in basically the middle of the woods or in the woods, I think for those young drivers, it allows for misbehavior, where I think in those situations, it may be wise for us to have some sort of surveillance. Whether it's just one camera that's on the parking lot so that we know. But I'm very concerned about just having a parking lot in the middle of nowheres with all these young people driving, and they all find out, hey, you can go here and nobody can watch us. And that just concerns me a little.
Does that remind you of your past?
Yes, it does.
So Emily, I would just mention that you, on this, what Councilmember Jacobus brought up earlier, I'd rather see the cars from the road rather than take down trees and be contrary to preserving our preserves. So with neighbor input, we'll be as judicious as possible. When I see the cost of taking down trees, it just kind of runs contrary to the whole point of this. So if we have a variety of parking options, whichever works best for the folks that are going to use it or live there or whatever, then that makes sense. We'll just figure out the best possible place, but let's not be quick to gravel.
Any other Councilman Morgan?
Yeah, on the second item there about seek advisement on environmental protection through possible partnerships with wildlife and conservation work. The one thing we had, I guess a couple presentations ago, we had within the green space, we had dedicated conservation areas. I think when we spoke at the last meeting, we said, we'll consider conservation easement, but it would be the entirety of the property, putting it into some type of trust, not segmenting portions of that area. And I just want to make sure that we're still kind of on that path where we're not looking at designating, because you can't control where the wildlife goes. You can't say, okay, the foxes need to stay here, or the deer will designate this. I just think we need to look at how do we preserve the whole space? And if we put it into conservation, like we discussed last week, let's make sure that in fact the whole thing goes into conservation. We're not talking about segmenting off part of the property.
Any other Councilman Moore?
I would just like to echo what Councilmember Jacobus was saying, is that little bit of infrastructure part that you've identified in this last part should be a part of all of our parks where we're talking about putting parking area. Is there, number one, there should be probably rules and regulations, no alcohol. Some of the city ordinance things that should be standing out there anyway, hours of operation, as appropriate to those. And then, as we learned with Lacapani, the surveillance is necessary.
And I guess that goes, this is more of an expanded thing, not necessarily for tonight, but I know we're having I've gotten some complaints, and I think people have called the police. We're actually having people for years have hunted on the old Milton park and preserve. They're out there shooting guns again. Like, I don't know if they're hunting deer, but that's an issue that if we don't, that's a danger issue. And I would just ask whether it's parks or you guys, see what we can do to actually find out what's going on there, because it's starting up again and now we're in hunting season. People do go and hunt for deer on that property as well as on the school board property. But I think that's, if we check our police logs, Steve, I think calls have come in recently because there's rapid fire where people are back there with guns shooting on our property, on the city property. And I think we need to do something about enforcement on that safety standpoint.
We'll dig into that.
Okay. Any other questions for Emily? Okay, with that, I will ask that we adjourn into executive session to discuss personnel, land acquisition, and potential litigation.
moved.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Cookerly and a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?